We have seen an unprecedented and terrible rise of residential school denialism.
Well. As the push to criminalize residential school denialism continues, especially for those who point out that to date, 0 bodies have actually been discovered at the former Kamloops Indian Residential School, a BC lawyer who took on the province's Law Society over that very issue has just come out on top after a David versus Goliath type battle.
It's such a simple, discrete issue to get to the bottom of. All it takes is a shovel.
And they send us messages telling us they're there.
I'm Drea Humphrey with Rebel News, bringing you an interview with that lawyer now. Many of you probably remember Jim Heller. He's the Victoria-based criminal defense lawyer who sued his own licensing body, the Law Society of British Columbia, for defamation after it published a link to false statements made about him by the First Nations Justice Council. The council declared that a resolution Heller and fellow lawyer Mark Barry had brought forth during the Society's annual general meeting was racist and supported residential school genocide and denialism. What exactly was the abomination proposed during the resolution, you ask? Heller was simply wanting the Society to correct misinformation in its mandatory Indigenous intercultural course for members. The course, like so many universities, politicians, educators, and news reporters, regurgitated the false 2021 claim that the Kamloops First Nation band had discovered an unmarked burial site containing the bodies of 215 children on the former Kamloops Indian Residential School grounds, when in reality, 5 years later, the band that first made that claim has never excavated nor confirmed the findings of a single body. Heller just wanted the Society to update the course to say potential graves, which is closer to what the band itself has backpedaled to saying anyways when they say 200 probable graves or anomalies. Imagine that. A lawyer who values facts. You'd think the province's Law Society would value them too, but instead it took Heller having to file a libel suit against them and winning. Well, legally, it's not called a win, it's called a private settlement with confidential terms. But in a day and age where correcting the false 215 claim gets politicians like Dallas Brody shunned from their Conservative Party.
John Rustad says Vancouver Quilchena MLA Dallas Brody is no longer welcome in his caucus after she posted videos to social media mocking victims of residential schools.
Educators like Jim McMurtry frog marched out of class and terminated, and even the Honorable Justice Shelley Fitzpatrick screamed at and smeared as a racist in her own courtroom. I'd say this is a free speech win for more than just Heller. But either way, here's how he feels now that the battle is over.
You know, I'm a lawyer. I don't think that's lost in the narrative to anybody. I'm a lawyer that's dealing with the Law Society and all of that. And I've had a lot of cases, and I've had to shepherd my clients through their cases. And, you know, I'm a criminal lawyer, and often they're really taxing. But I've never been the litigant before. It's a whole different ballgame, and I'm happy it's over. It just feels good. Otherwise, thinking about it all the time, it's like, that's a lot, you know, on top of all the other things in life. Really happy it's over. I'm happy with the resolution. I think it's great, and it's good. I'm happy that we did what we did, and I'm happy that it's resolved now.
At Rebel News, we don't back down from bringing you the other side of the story. That's why, despite how uncomfortable it was to do so, we've been telling you the truth about this contentious issue from the start. If you appreciate our journalism and want to help spread the truth, go to our special website called kamloopsdocumentary.com. Watch, share, and donate what you can. After Heller filed suit, the Society at first did dig its heels in, as I've previously reported, but they eventually took down their statement about his resolution. And even the coursework was revised to say there are 200 targets of interest at the Kamloops site that are probable burials as they demonstrate multiple GPR characteristics of burials. Quite the word salad, isn't it? The society also quietly put up the following on its site about the press release they had since removed about Heller's resolution. To the degree it was understood by some to have defamed Mr. Heller, the Law Society wishes to confirm that was not its intention. The society called that retraction a statement of clarification, but is it the apology Heller was understandably looking for?
An apology, as I understand it, it's got a certain express definition. It's when someone expresses some sort of contrition. It's a humbling kind of moment. I don't know if this is exactly that, but it's an acknowledgement. I'll leave it for others to kind of interpret exactly what their clarification is all about. It's a gesture. I'm happy. Thank you. Thank you, Law Society. Anyways, there's a plurality of opinions on this issue. I'm not an outlier. We're not outliers. And what I've seen since then, since this whole process unfolded, I've gotten so much support from so many people, just on the basic ideas, the fundamental points that we've got to be fact-driven.
Speaking of things needing to be fact-driven, have you seen the latest excuse for why, despite the Kamloops First Nation band receiving millions of tax dollars related to its false 215 discovery claim, you should be ashamed of yourself for wanting to know the truth of what is actually buried beneath the soil there? The narrative has moved from Kamloops Chief Casimir's "that's white supremacy" to "the truth is already there. You just don't see it because you don't communicate with the dead."
I see dead people.
Following the full Senate's decision to reject a bid to criminalize whatever the heck residential school denialism is, the Assembly of First Nations recently called an emergency resolution demanding Ottawa criminalize it through new standalone legislation anyway. And during a press release about their demands, Manitoba Grand Chief Garrison Seedy said this.
And I don't think we should have to prove to anybody what happened to these people because they are there. And they send us messages telling us they're there. And Chief Kashmir and I went to visit the sacred site. You can tell they're there, right? Feel the power and the energy. For somebody that's not from our communities, that doesn't understand our culture, you cannot understand what that means. But we do. And you just don't go into any cemetery and start digging up graves just to prove that someone died.
But you can't hear them talk to us because you're not us. We are on us. We have our culture, and we can hear them talk. You know something? We can't have a country with such an incohesive kind of commonality. It's just bullshit. So what they're trying to do, they're having a press release where they're saying, a press conference where they're going further than ever before, saying that our proof is in our hearts, and that's all that we need, and we want to throw you in jail if you question this. So,
and you know what the craziest part about all of this is? It's that there's still going to be a percentage of the population, a large percentage of the media even, that will, even after a press conference like that, will still want to compel the speech of those simply speaking politically incorrect truths. Like BC's very own NDP Attorney General Nikki Sharma, who says her government supports the quest to lock up those so-called residential school denialists.
We have seen an unprecedented and terrible rise of residential school denialism in our legislature here in Victoria, and we as a government have solidly condemned it every time. We've reached out to organizations when it happens to make sure that the survivors that are hearing that type of painful rhetoric are supported. And we've also been calling on the federal government to take action through the criminal code related to addressing residential school denialism in our country. I'm happy to work with the minister related to that, and I appreciate that the AFN is taking such a strong stance.
That's the top lawyer in our province.
So I think it's kind of like this, because it's such a simple, discrete issue to get to the bottom of. All it takes is a shovel. All it takes is a little bit of goodwill. All it takes is at least $12.1 million that have been given to the band to do the excavation that we now realize just went nowhere. They had an obligation to give monthly reports to the federal government. We now realize that even that wasn't happening. Everybody in their mind thinks of that horizon. Everybody thinks one day we'll know. Mm-hmm. No one can imagine that there's a day that we won't know. And I think that motivates maybe me, people like me, say, we've just got to keep talking, keep moving on. We can't stand still. And then one day, here's my point, one day we get to that point when we realize, and at this point I've got a lot of reasons to being very skeptical. I don't think there are any bodies in that apple orchard at all. And at that point, you just imagine some sense of reckoning. But maybe that's a naive kind of aspiration. Maybe there are no reckonings. Maybe nothing happens. Maybe no one will ever know. Nikki Sharma will never have to deal with the fact that she was trying to criminalize people that were just seeking the truth or trying to talk about it reasonably. But I don't know. That's not any country that any of us can feel proud of. And do we feel proud?
Does anyone feel pride in this great country called Canada has taken many hits over the last decade, but one of its most severe blows is in fact connected to these mass, unproven, clandestine, unmarked grave claims. After they swept through the country almost as fast and furious as the church burning sprees that followed them, claims, especially the Kamloops 215, were used as the reason for Parliament to drop the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's own characterization of the residential school system as cultural genocide and simply declare it genocide. That's why knowing what's actually buried in that apple orchard in Kamloops matters. Because if it's not 215 children, that's not just great news, that's news that can set our country free. Drea Humphrey for Rebel News.